So this is what happens to a house, to our house when books arrive, and before they get mailed out or the other one sent into storage. They just take up the space in all kinds of chaotic ways, which feels very comfortable for me because it perfectly reflects my creative process. Susan's not usually very happy about it though. So I thought I'd bring you in today. A bunch of books arrived in Canada. Grounded Spirituality has arrived. It's also arrived in the US and they're off to Amazon. So I think people who ordered from Amazon who are going to will get the book quite a bit sooner than the March 15th pub date. It's like this whole process took so much longer throughout than I thought it would, but when it came to printing, it got printed early and arrived early, and so we got a bunch up here in Canada because we had a Canadian distribution on Amazon.ca and off inrealment.com. So I thought I would open the box. I haven't opened a box yet. I haven't looked at the book yet. I've been nervous about looking at the book. It's been sitting here since yesterday. So I thought I would bring you into the process, as I did with the book proof a week or two ago. And what happens at this stage is after I get the book, I then will sit down on my own and compare the book to the book proof to make sure everything's there. And I just want to say before I do this that, you know, this book process was very difficult on a personal level. It was I had all kinds of personal challenges throughout this process, and physical challenges. It was a lot harder than my first two longer books, An Uncommon Bond and Soul Shaping. But I kept going, and it was also very hard for my editor, Amy Gallagher, who worked closely with me. Her dad, Daniel, was sick with cancer for much of the book process. And you know, he's a deeply spiritual man with all kinds of, positive energy coming through him. So just when it looked very bad, he would come back. And somehow, and I don't really quite understand it yet, he was somehow inextricably linked to this book writing process. And you know, she kept working on the edit even when she was beside him and he was sick in bed. She would continue. We continued. And I asked myself, why did we continue? Why did we keep pushing? You know, why? And I think, you know, I mean, her dad was fighting for his life, and I think we were fighting for creation too in our own way. We believe there's something in this book. I mean, there's a lot of books. There's millions of books. So, you know, I don't want to overstate it, but there was a certain energetic charge coming off this book throughout the process for me. I was afraid of this book. It was different than writing my first two longer books. There's a spiritual activism component to it. I'm dissecting and looking at what I call patriarchal spirituality, what I call the New Cage movement. So there's that whole piece in the book. And then there was also the call to try to language a model going forward for humanity. I didn't just want to sort of rebel against the system. I wanted to sort of explore the way in which I felt that system wasn't serving our embodied experience going forward, because our species is at risk, and we need spiritual models not that take us away from the self and deny the veracity of the self and bash the ego and bash our stories and send us plummeting into meditation caves for years and years thinking that that's going to change the world. We need something that's connective, embodied, relational, human honoring. And so I wanted to do both, I guess. I felt the call to really acknowledge what wasn't working from my perspective. So that's part of the book. But I didn't just want to be a rebel. I also wanted to present a model going forward, or at least pieces of it, and then others can take it to the next stage, you know. So, and Amy, I know, felt a lot of those things as well, that this book was an essential book. And so we continued, and it was a very emotional process for both of us in different ways, of course, because her dad was dying. And within 12 minutes of my sending in the final edit notes in early January 12th, I think, to Alison Woodruff, who set the book up and did a brilliant job, I'm sure. I have to look at the book, but I know from this how amazing her work was. Amy's dad died. So it all seemed somehow connected. His journey and this creative journey, and yeah, it was a really profound process. The whole process was profound. I had to keep summoning the belief that this book was worth it, and that throughout the process. And you know, that wasn't easy. And a lot of times I would think of people, of social media supporters, Facebook and Instagram, faces, stories, people who had overcome so much just to keep me going. It was very helpful to me, or my writing students, and just think about all the things they've overcome and that they've shared. And I thought, God, you know, you can keep going. You know, you can keep going. And anyway, so I'm going to open the box now. Hopefully not cut myself in the process. It's no accident that yesterday the books were delivered by this lovely Sikh man, you know, super spiritual guy, delivered them, pulled up, you know, on our street in this like snowy Canadian rugged weather, because it's a pretty ragged and rugged book, you know. Yeah, so I thought I'd share it with you because you were part of the process. As I said in one of the last videos, you know, a writer never really writes alone. You know, it's a completely relational experience. So let's do it. It's always a little nerve-wracking because like you're worried that like the pages like will overflow and it didn't work with the spine thickness and all that kind of stuff. Looks like a book. Spine thickness works. We use new paper, different from an uncommon bond where we use thicker paper, because there's 408 pages, and which I know breaks all the rules. You're not supposed to write a book more than 150 pages anymore. But I couldn't stop. So, and we had some decisions to be made around like a lot of it is a dialogue with me and sort of an ungrounded, imagined spiritual seeker named Michael. Anybody who's ever dated an ungrounded spiritual seeker will relate to this book. Yeah, so the distance between the dialogue sections looks perfect. That was Allison's suggestion, and I think she was totally right. Yeah, so we have ourselves a book, and I don't think it's a normal book. There's just something about this book, and yeah. So, thank you, all of you, for supporting my process, and for and for ordering books. I mean, I know a number of books have already been ordered. It's doing quite well on Amazon. Anyone interested, Amazon.com has it. Bookstores can order in through Ingram or New Leaf. I sell signed copies off of inrealment.com. That's my book plug. And I think for any of you who are on the path, in whatever way you're on this thing called the path, and interested in this thing we call spirituality, and I get into what that word even means, because I don't think we've spent enough time really defining it, and I think the definition is important. Definition of enlightenment is important. Awakening, what are we talking about? And I get into this in this book, not in a heady way, but just in a very clear and straightforward way, and provide my own definitions that I think are more expansive, inclusive, and will take us farther than some of the more linear, narrow, elitist, rarefied versions of these terms that we've experienced out there. But for anyone who's on the path at any point seeking sacred purpose, all of part 3 is really about sacred purpose and finding path. You know, it was like I was writing Michael, in my dialogue with Michael, who kind of became a friend to me, even though he doesn't really exist in the writing of this book. And you know, a lot of the book was about trying to get him here. You know, he comes to me in this dialogue structure, you know, seeking something more. The ungrounded spiritualities haven't served him. His life is a mess, and yet he's meditating for hours and TMing and all the rest of it. And so, you know, he comes in the book to really try to understand how he can integrate his human story, his real life, with this thing called spirituality. So we go through a process together. And much of the dialogue is really focused on just sort of getting him here. So part 2 is called Here. What does it mean to be here, right? So hard to be here. And then it was like, I thought, well, then this guy's going to say to me, and he does say to me, well, so you've got me more here, Jeff, but like, why am I here? It's so hard and difficult to be here. And for me, the answer is sacred purpose. I mean, the answer is, the why is why you're here is really about that which is encoded within your being. So what I call soul scriptures, true path, you can call it anything you want. Callings, gifts, So part 3 is really about, now that he's more here, it's sort of trying to infuse his here-ness with his why-ness for the most part. And so we then go through a process around identifying his path and dealing with the challenges of honoring it in a practical world where he has to make a living and all the rest of it. So I take him through the process, and for anybody who's at any stage in the process, including people who've really got affixed to New Age concepts that aren't serving them, there's a chapter for everybody in this book. So check it out if you're inclined. Grounded Spirituality.